I can definitely see this being a great travel companion if you're out and about on a trip and you just want to relax but also know what you're looking at. This really does take the stress out of that. It's almost like you have your own personal tour guide with you. So these are mountains that I never would have known about or known any information about. And even compared to just using AI and using like my phone's camera, I mean, this is just way more responsive and accurate. So yeah, I'm impressed.
So what you're looking at are the Unistellar ENVISION Binoculars. Now these are augmented reality binoculars that are going to be out next year. Now I'd like to thank Unistellar for this awesome opportunity. They flew me and several other content creators to New York City, and then from there, we took a train about an hour north to actually use these binoculars out in the wilderness. So this opportunity was really unique as we were able to get some hands-on time with these prototypes so we could truly get an idea of what the company is actually creating.
So we're over here at Grand Central Station and we're about to hop in a train. Where are we going?
Is there Hudson somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere up the Hudson. We're gonna be looking at the stars and looking at a lot of things in the sky. So we're heading up the Hudson right now. We're gonna be getting off at a stop pretty far from New York City and we're gonna be doing some stargazing, right? And looking up and seeing some cool things in the sky. Yeah, and landscape as well. So, oh, and we got another train going on the other side. Okay, a lot going on. Yeah.
Now, whether you're brand new to this project or you've been keeping up with it for a while, I do have some really good news for you. These prototypes are definitely very far ahead and the product works really well, and it's not even like they feel like they're about to fall apart or even anything like that. So we're getting very close to it being completely production ready. Maybe there just might be a few refinements that need to be adjusted with the design, but it's pretty much a final complete product. These binoculars are really fun to use and also very interesting, and despite them being a prototype, we're actually able to use them completely as advertised. Now there's two main purposes of using these binoculars. That is to look at your surroundings or to look up at the sky. So while you're looking at your surroundings, the device is taking open source map data and then interpreting that data to tell you what exactly you're looking at. So for example, if you're out somewhere and there's a bunch of mountains around you and then from there you want to identify those mountains, then you can literally take these binoculars, point them at the mountain, and then from there, augmented reality will tell you exactly the mountain that you're looking at. So not only are we getting that extra layer of information, but the 10x optical zoom makes it even easier to see what you're trying to look at. And when we tested this in upstate New York, it was very fast to identify things. There was really no lag or latency. I could go from one mountain to another mountain, and then the augmented reality that I could see through the binoculars was actually very quick at identifying things. In addition to that, we also got other useful information, such as the distance away, and then also the height of the mountain, so a lot of really interesting facts that were learned by using this feature. Now this is true augmented reality. And the augmented reality is actually very advanced with features such as Go To. So with Go To, you can actually pick an object in the app, and then from there, the augmented reality will guide you to that object. And then there's target lock, which actually allows you to pick a spot, and then from there, the device saves it, allowing you to very easily go back to that same spot. So these are true binoculars. So unlike virtual reality or even a virtual reality headset that's using cameras to then show you a video feed, you're actually looking through a true optical lens. And the optics were created in collaboration with Nikon, so their expertise is being incorporated. And then from there, the augmented reality is simply sitting on top of that lens. So this really is a great implementation because it feels like you are using real binoculars because you literally are. But in addition to that, you're getting a lot of valuable and useful information laid on top of it.
So we've got the group over here and we're gonna use the binoculars to look at some things out here. Got the ferry over here, taking people between the two sides of the river. Just a really beautiful area over here. The sun is on the verge of setting, well I guess in an hour from now, but a little bit more so than earlier today as we get further into the day.
Now, it's very likely that you will be using these binoculars in a location that doesn't have cell reception, so you're probably wondering, where does this data and all this information actually come from? There's no way that it can just figure out things on its own, right? Well, you do have to use a companion app, and then with that companion app, you can load information onto the binoculars. So it's kind of like using Google Maps in offline mode, so that you can really be anywhere and not rely on a data connection, but at the same time, still have useful data to work with. So if you know that you're going to be in the Ozarks, for example, then you're going to download the maps for that area. Now, obviously, you're not going to download the entire world's worth of maps if you're only traveling to a certain location. So you do have to do this in advance, but that's not really much of an inconvenience, and it really makes a lot of sense. And it's also really the only way that this is actually possible. So the way that they figured this out is actually very intuitive, and what's cool too is that this data wasn't created by Unistellar. So if you're not aware, there are open source maps out there for basically the entire world. So all of this data is already out there, and then with Unistellar's technology, they're able to apply this data so you can actually use it with the binoculars. So pretty much anywhere throughout the world, you'll have this information available so that you can use the product. Now, there might be 1 or 2 countries where this is not permitted, but pretty much everywhere that you'll be traveling to, you can use these binoculars. So in a sense, these binoculars are similar to Google Lens, where all you have to do is simply point them at something, and then it tells you what you're looking at. But these binoculars are a dedicated piece of hardware designed specifically for this purpose. And especially if you're off the grid, you can't just point your smartphone at something and have it run a search and then come back with that information, because you're not going to have reception, you might not be able to zoom in all the way, so you're still getting really good binoculars, so you can do anything that binoculars can do, like optically zoom in on things. But another way to use them is to look up at the stars. And in a sense, this is a completely different feature because it's a completely different experience. But it's also very similar in the sense that you're pointing the binoculars at something and then it's telling you what you're looking at. And of course, the solar system is way different from anything that's actually on Earth. Now, whether you're looking at things on Earth or you're looking at things in the sky, you're going to have a clear surroundings, and especially if you're looking up at the sky, you better make sure that there's not too many clouds, because it cannot look through the clouds, which I think does make a lot of sense since it is an optical lens. And when looking up at the stars, it's not necessarily offering night vision because it does look very similar to when you're looking with your actual eyes. And it is zooming in slightly because these still are binoculars, but the real value here is that they can quickly identify anything in the sky just by pointing them at anything you see. So if you're pointing at a certain star, for example, it's going to tell you what that star is. If you're pointing at a certain constellation, it's going to tell you about that constellation. So just like what I was talking about, this is instant. It is so fast at telling you exactly what the binoculars are looking at. Now, some of the creators there, such as myself, don't even have a lot of experience when looking at the stars or astrology in general, but there are actually some major astrology enthusiasts there on the trip with us, and they were especially impressed, so I'll definitely take their word for that. But I know, at least for myself, as someone who doesn't even have a lot of experience when it comes to this, I did find it to be very fascinating. We're out here on this dark night at this lake, and we're going to be using the binoculars to look up at the stars. What do you think, Wade?
It is quite dark out here, but I will say this. It's a mostly clear sky, so we should be seeing some interesting stuff.
Yeah, I literally cannot even see you here on this video.
How's it going? This is Wade from Optical. There we go. Oh, maybe that's a little too much light. I don't think I want to see that.
Bane Tech over here. That's so creepy. So, funny story about this, when we had to go out into the wilderness to an area that was completely dark out to see the stars up in the sky, we did have to have an Uber drop us off in that very remote location. And the Uber driver was like, "Are you sure this is the right place? Are you sure you want to be dropped off here?" Because there really was nothing out there. And sure enough, once we were done, at that point it was maybe 11 p.m. and it was almost impossible to even get an Uber out of there because it was so remote. So fortunately, we did have cell reception, and eventually an Uber did pick us up, but if we couldn't get an Uber for some reason, it would have been well over an hour walk to get to any sort of civilization. So that's good at least, and shout out to the Uber drivers that drive out in the middle of nowhere hoping that people will call them, so I'm glad that we made it back safely. But overall, I find the ENVISION Smart Binoculars to be a very interesting product by Unistellar, and it definitely made for a very exciting time being out there in nature, being able to quickly identify what I'm actually looking at. And with the onboard GPS and augmented reality, all that technology really did make a difference. It's so refreshing not to have to look at my phone to figure out what I'm looking at, and instead just use my own eyes looking through the optical lens to actually be able to identify things. Now, I do recommend visiting their website if you want to learn more about this product. The rollout is going to be throughout 2026 as they ramp up production, and I do know that if you pre-order, you will be able to receive your binoculars earlier compared to just waiting for the full retail sale. If you pre-order, then you can save some money on your purchase, so that's definitely something worth considering. But thank you, Unistellar, for this really awesome opportunity. It really was a very unique experience. I learned a lot out there in the wilderness, and I can't wait for my next adventure.